It's Song Talk Radio with Michael, Neil, Phil, and the gang.
Welcome to Song Talk Radio. This is the show with songwriters talking to other songwriters about the craft of songwriting. We share tips, tools, and techniques, and together we all become better at writing songs. I'm your host, Neil Modi, and with me are the astronomical members of the Song Talk Radio action team. We have Photon Phil.
That's me, here and energized.
All right, good.
Spinning clockwise, I think.
Okay, so you should be blasting through space, but all right. And we have Meteor Mike.
Oh, see, that's easier. I was afraid I wasn't going to understand the physics of it, but yeah. So a meteor, so that means I don't hit Earth, right? The distinction between meteors and meteorites is that meteorites are the ones that hit the Earth. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right,
yeah, meteor is just the light. The meteorite.
So I'll just be passing by. I'll see you later.
Yeah, I could use meteorite, Mike, and then you'd be like, "Yeah, I can really rock."
Just some of the bits of
I'm a hit.
Hit.
Welcome to Science Talk Radio.
Please send your comments and questions to @SongTalk Radio on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, or feedback at songtalk.ca, and we'll share your thoughts and feelings on the show. And please visit us at songtalk.ca to find out how you can be a guest. And just before we get to our guests tonight, we completed our part of the songwriting challenge for 2021, where we challenged ourselves to write a song with one single chord progression throughout. And we had a great discussion on the podcast. So definitely check out that episode about the songwriting challenge. And of course, we continue to invite our listeners to submit their answers to the challenge. We've already received quite a number of them, and we're going to have probably about 2 episodes in February and in March where we showcase your songs on the show as your answers to this challenge. So keep on sending them in, guys. We appreciate getting them, and they sound amazing, and we'll
Great stuff.
Keep an eye out keep your ears out for when we talk about them on the podcast. Any other news there, guys?
We got a little email from Mike D, I believe.
Yeah.
Just commenting on the show, saying that he enjoyed our discussion on our approaches. Mm-hmm. And it always makes us happy when we hear something from people outside our little bubble. So it's thanks for listening, Mike. And yes, Mike, you are subscribed to the newsletter, so right. You should be getting it. We don't send out a lot of stuff. It's once a month usually. So
once a month, no spam. And
no
yeah,
spam.
That's the interesting thing about the songwriting challenges is that everyone comes up with different answers, very different approaches that we all took to the song. So pretty interesting stuff. Okay, so our guests tonight are the Canadian folk group The Fugitives, and they released a musical documentary called Ridge, including their song Take Me Back to Old Ontario. So we're just going to hear a little bit of their song, and then we'll come right back.
Foreign land lay a wounded soldier boy. He was fighting for a flag he thought was right. And as he lay there dying, his comrades gathered near to listen to the last words that he'd say. He raised up on his arm, looked off towards the west, watched the setting sun fade fast away. As he lay back on the ground, a tear bedimmed his eye. Those who gathered round heard him say, take me back to old Ontario, where the sun does ever shine, where the tall and stately maples bear their branches to the sky. Take me back to old Ontario, where my dear old mother lies. Take me back to old Ontario, lay me by my mother's side.
Canadian folk group The Fugitives released Ridge, a musical documentary covering the Battle of Vimy Ridge, featuring documentary-style monologues along with performances of songs written during World War I, reimagined by the group for Remembrance Day in 2020. In partnership with UBC's Chan Centre for the Performing Arts, Ridge was initially commissioned as a monologue by band member Brendan and McLeod to be performed on the Chan Centre stage, and due to COVID-19, morphed into a feature film with the accompanying historical music. The group has won numerous Canadian and international music awards and have graced stages all across the world, including a performance in Glastonbury. The film is accompanied by a 14-track album, Trench Songs, including the song Take Me Back to Old Ontario, written in 1915 by Canadian Frank E. Balson, which the group covers on the album and performs in the film. Welcome to Song Talk Radio, Brendan and Adrian.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So I just want to start out by, maybe you guys can just talk a little bit about the nature of the Fugitives, the band members, and what your specific roles are in the band.
Sure.
How did you all come together?
So Fugitives has been around since 2007, which means we're very old now. Adrian and I have been serving kind of as a principal songwriter since 2010, roughly, which is about when we did our third album. So we've done the last three together as the songwriters. And for the last 4 or 5 years now, we've had Chris Suen on banjo, who's been with us on and off for about that length of time since 2007. And Carly Frey, who plays fiddle. But she's been with us. She's the newest member, and she's been with us for 3 or 4 years.
Right on. Okay. And this project of yours, the Ridge and the accompanying album, I find it fascinating that you took old text, like old poems that were written mostly by soldiers, and reimagined them into songs. Is that kind of how it went? Yeah,
it's some poems, most of the and either poems or songs that either were written by soldiers or songs that were around then that they would have sung in World War I. So what we were looking for specifically was no patriotic songs that soldiers would have mainly sang with each other. They were mostly about a lot of satire, a lot of songs that actually started off as they would take a melody from a popular song at the time and they would change it to reflect their circumstances. So we were interested in those kind of snippets of songs. So yeah.
And how did you
find them?
Yeah.
Snap. How did you find them?
It took some digging specifically for the taking back to old Ontario. So in the First World War, Canada didn't really have a huge regiment compared to the British. We were still under British control and British command. And so Vimy is thought of as the time when Canada really decorated itself militarily, and that was in the First World War. So specifically Canadian songs in World War I were a little harder to come by. But actually, there's a bunch of songbooks we found. The best one we found was at McMaster University has... online, they've done a PDF online of this 400-page soldier songbook, and it has it broken down into all these awesome categories like church songs, patriotic songs, anti-war songs, Canadian-specific songs. So that was probably our best guide. It had some of the sheet music, but mainly it had just the lyrics. And so since we were doing new music anyways, it was a really great reference point to have. And it took some digging, though, to find it.
Is that available online for anyone? Or?
Yeah. You just got to dig. You could probably, I can't remember what Google rabbit hole I went down to. I spent a while on it, but I think if you just Googled McMaster University World War I's Canadian Soldiers Songbook, you'd probably find it. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and how was it, this project, you guys having for years been songwriters, to do other songs or adapting them? How did that feel for you, and how did you find your way into it?
It was nice. It was like half the work was done. We didn't have to write lyrics. But it was also a particular songwriting challenge, to look at already existing lines. We used, some of them were already songs, but some of what we used was poetry, which wasn't intended to be sung. And in both cases, we were inventing new music anyways. So it was interesting to, with the ones that already had like, a rhyme structure or a rhythm to listen to the words and try to figure out what musicality fit with those rhyme structures. And then with some of the poems that were never meant to even be musical, those were a little bit more challenging. But yeah, it was kind of fun to see what music came out of those lines, and which is also a bit of like a songwriting exercise, because then you kind of look at what lines seem to encapsulate the song and thus can be a chorus, and that kind of thing. So it was cool. It was like I don't think either of us have ever done anything like it. So it was a neat challenge.
Were you guys adamant about taking all the words verbatim, or did you do a little editing, trimming, replacing?
I think we started out trying to be pretty adamant about sticking to exactly how it was. And so I think most of the songs are pretty close to how they were. But then there was a few that became more of like mongrelized. There's one that's even, I think, has pieces of 3 different poems in it. And so we took some liberties with that. But I think more often than not, we were trying to pretty much stick to how it was.
I was wondering about... sorry. Go on, Brendan.
No, sorry. Zoom. I was just going to say, sometimes it gets really complicated too, is exactly which rendition you're paying attention. The Next Man Who Dies, which is on there, I think it had it's from the Boer War, so it already had about 7 or 8 different renditions, and they all have different lyrics. So it's like Hallelujah has 300 verses, but really people know the 4 verses that Jeff Buckley did, which turned into whatever, so it's kind of like that. Like it's The Next Man Who Dies had some popular versions, but then they had some other versions that were way longer. So you have to start making editorial decisions at some point.
I was wondering if you made use of the song stylings or the song approach that were common during the First World War, because there was certainly a style of songs that was popular at the time.
I think we were respectfully to the music of the time, but we were trying to actually get away from the music of the time, partly because we kept thinking about that Peter Jackson documentary, They Shall Never Grow Old. And there's a moment, he took all this old World War I footage, which is jerky and sepia colored. And when you watch those old film reels, you feel like you're watching another world. You can't really relate to these young men you see, because they just feel like they're, from like a storybook or something. But then he took it, he colorized it, he corrected the time so that they're marching in correct human time. And all of a sudden, when that shift happens, it's like they become real humans that you could see walking down the street. And so in a way we wanted to kind of do that with the music. So by giving these words more modern sounding melodies and instrumentation and harmonies, we were hoping that the words would be then heard fresh. So people wouldn't hear old kind of melody and kind of have the words go in one ear and out the other. They would hear it as a more modern song and really hear the words, and so they'd land better.
So when you approached, then did you guys literally not you had access to some of the sheet music? You said, I'm assuming you had no access to any recordings of any of these songs, or maybe you did. But in other words, you went strictly based off the words. You didn't reference the music.
Yeah, I mean, it helps that neither Brendan or I read music very well. But no, I think there are a few recordings of some of these songs, but we purposely decided to stay away from them so that we were just being completely pure with our own musical ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And the approach you took to this, has it affected your songwriting in any way? I don't know. Have you written songs since doing this project, or are you still in the middle of it?
I've written a few songs since. I think, it goes a little bit back to what I was saying of how when the words are already there for you, you sort of you become even more hyper aware of what are good lines for a chorus, what are good lines for a pre-chorus. So I think it's just kind of entrenched that a little more, which is great. I think one thing that was great for the band was that often our approach to making albums has been to just think of whatever we can think of and be like, oh, we want horn lines. Oh, we want a brass section. Oh, we want a string section, a gospel choir, and just do whatever we want in the recording studio. And then, of course, when it comes time to tour as a quartet, as we do, without a drum kit and without a gospel choir, we have to completely reinvent the songs. But because we were recording this in COVID, we bubbled as a band, so just the four of us, and we made it a challenge that we hadn't done before to only record what we could play amongst ourselves, and that ended up being great because we made an album that sounds more like our band, our touring act, than we've ever made before, and we really like it. And so I think that taught us like a lesson going forward. I think that we'll probably try to use that approach for the next couple of recordings and just kind of rein things in a bit, because it was really great for us.
Was there anything in this process that posed as a really difficult challenge to sort of push through, or like in terms of adapting any of those texts? Or
I think that came a little more. I think that we tried to. I think the challenge was in separating, like we were doing a theater show, which ended up being a movie, which was also an album along the way. So I think, and they all kind of had different conceits and different conceptual through lines going through them. So I think everything started to blend together, and how to distinguish them in our brains and have each one have like a coherent artistic voice. I think that was the biggest challenge with this thing, is just when you're working in different forms to not make it just a big mush puddle where you're just throwing stuff at the wall. And like, there had to be a reason to make the album, to release the album. There had to be a reason to do the film. There had to be a reason to do the theater show. And going forward, there has to be another reason to redo the theater show out of the film, out of the album, like it has to always have a reason. So I think that's been interesting to parse through.
Yeah, I think we've learned from that as well. We've never done, like, our last album had a loose concept in that it was all the songs were dedications of different kinds. But that's a pretty loose concept. This is like a pretty tight concept. And it was actually really nice having to work within such tight parameters and have a variety of songs and dynamism within these walls, which I think is something that we might also try again.
When you're talking about the parameters, you said early on, no patriotic songs. What did that mean to you?
I guess it's like, oh yeah, you go.
Oh, yeah. Well. So Brendan had started this process, and so he sent me a lot of those links he was talking about to the songbooks through McMaster and stuff, and I remember going through a lot of it, and it felt like 80% of it was kind of like rah-rah kind of jingoistic songs about like almost like how great war is and how proud we are of our boys and brave face and so then when you finally stumbled upon one that sounded like it was more in the soldier's voice and was like angry or sarcastic, it just felt so much more honest. And so yeah, the patriotic ones just felt like they were propaganda, honestly.
And it's also like a distinguish between those were mostly for people at home, and then there was the songs like I've come through a lot of letters from World War I soldiers, and you can't paint them all one with millions of people. But generally speaking, trench songs are what you'd imagine when you put that many. People forget how young these people were. So 12 to 45 years old, but particularly on the younger end of things, like 20 years old, if you put them all together, they're not like, oh, the war's so great. In fact, a lot of the songs are like takes on those parody songs. So like King and Country is a famous World War I patriotic song, and it was for King and Country, and it ended up being a big satire about military brass and stuff, which makes sense for the circumstances they were living under. So I guess we wanted to be more true to that.
Right. Did you come across any songs about the Spanish flu?
Well, it's weird. Right now, I'm actually researching this really little known thing. After the war ended, a lot of Canadians were stranded in Kimnel Park because there weren't enough ships to bring them home, and they were stranded there for 4 months. And it's a little section of Wales. And it was during then they had a pandemic flu go through the camp of 15,000 soldiers, and so 73 of them died from the flu. So it's a very interesting thing to read now when you're going through a pandemic. So it's been there's a lot of allegories between the pandemic and World War I, but that was a more straight ahead, interesting one.
Why don't we take a listen?
All right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this song. Like, how did this one come together?
This one actually was the most organic, like band wise. So it's like typically Brendan and I are kind of the songwriters of the band, and then we'll work with our other players. And as Brendan mentioned, for the last couple of years, it's almost exclusively been Chris Suen, who's an excellent banjo player, and he also happens to be like a choir master, and he speaks like 9 languages and plays like 15 instruments. He's a pretty amazing guy. And
They should
Carly,
be talking to him, not us.
what's that?
They should be talking to him, not us.
Yeah, seriously. he's way more interesting than both of us put together. But and then Carly Frey, who's a really amazing violin player. So they're our band right now, and so we were on tour. Remember tour? We were on tour in BC, and we had like lyrics and the melody for this mapped out, but we hadn't really mapped out the instrumentation much, and so we just kind of jammed it, which isn't really something our band does a lot of. Usually Brendan and I just kind of bring stuff to the table ready to go, but in this case, and you'll hear it right off the top, you hear a cool little piece where the violin is pizzicato, and the banjo's playing like a plucky little melody, and they kind of start together, and then they kind of veer off and go into like a fourths harmony. And so that was just like, oh, that's cool, we haven't started a song that way before. And then it just kind of grew organically from there.
Cool. Well, let's take a listen.
Far and foreign land, lay a wounded soldier boy. He was fighting for a flag he thought was right. And as he lay there dying, his comrades gathered near to listen to the last words that he'd say. And he raised himself up on his arms, looked off towards the west, watched the setting sun fade fast away. As he lay back on the ground, a tear bedimmed his eyes. Those who gathered round heard him say, "Take me back to old Ontario, where the sun does ever shine, where the tall and stately maples rear their branches to the sky. Take me back to old Ontario, where my dear old mother lies. Take me back to old Ontario, lay me by my mother's side." It was in a southern city where the streets were paved in hard. A ragged newsboy trudged from day to day, and his cheeks were thin and pale, and his head was tired and hot, and his thoughts were of his old home far away. And he lay back on the doorstep, and he there fell fast asleep in dreamland, and he wandered back again. As a passerby drew near, he stopped to watch the lad, and heard him whisper faintly this refrain: "Take me back to old Ontario, where the sun does ever shine, where the tall and stately maples rear their branches reaches to the sky. Take me back to old Ontario, where my dear old mother lies. Take me back to old Ontario, lay me by my mother's side. Take me back, 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 take me back to old Ontario, lay me by my mother's side.
That's beautiful. Really
Gorgeous.
nice. I'm wondering, when the pace of the song picks up, it's working well. When you get to the chorus, I was because the chorus is so kind of drawn out. I was wondering, was it difficult to keep the rhythm up when you got to the chorus? It seemed to work great.
I'm trying to remember if this was one of the songs that sped up by like 2 BPM or not.
Yeah,
Do you remember?
I think it is.
I think it is. Yeah. So by the time the second verse comes in after the first chorus, and that's where you get the sort of 4 on the floor, like kick drum kind of driving beat, I think it jumps up by a couple BPM just to, because that's the kind of thing. Well, if we were playing it live, we'd probably jump up by like 10 BPM on it.
Yeah.
You get excited, right? But yeah, we had a couple songs where we'll just like crank it up just a little bit. You barely notice it, but you feel it,
So where did the words for this song come from? Were these part of a poem or?
No, so this was written, this is part of that songbook I was talking about. So I found this one in the Canadian Soldier songbook, yeah.
Oh, so it was the full
It was a
lyrics were in
song.
it?
It was a song.
Oh, it already was a song.
yeah.
Oh,
It was a
wow.
song.
Was the original melody much different, like completely different, or?
Yeah. From what I've been able to gather of it, yes. There's
Same.
like, also I haven't found like, you're just, all you can really find now are kind of interpretations of that song from maybe like the 30s or something on YouTube. So
Right.
you're not actually, I haven't found one that's like distinctly from 1919 or anything. But yeah, they're pretty, they're, more like, take me back to old Ontario.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's my terrible impression of 38. I don't know.
Right.
It transported me back in time. It was wonderful.
No, I really love the lift in the chorus. It really kind of, it doesn't even necessarily take off, but it sounds bigger, wider. Can you guys talk a little bit about like the musical choices you made, like the chords and things like that between the verse and the chorus?
Yeah, well, Brendan, I think you started this one, right, with chords and melody. I think this was one that you got the ball rolling on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. To be honest, sometimes I think it's like I don't really remember like the decision to go, okay, this chord structure to this chord structure. It becomes a bit of a soup. The only thing that I can remember about this song is at the end we were like, there's no more lyrics left. It doesn't feel done. We need to go somewhere and like make it something else. And so we just had this weird melody, and usually we try like 900 things. And so we were like, you guys sing Old Ontario, you think sing it back. I'm like, maybe it'll work. And we were kind of, I think it's almost like we were being lazy at that point, but it seemed to feel fine. And then we just, for better or for worse, never changed it. But it's just one of those ones. It's really one of those songs we started writing on the road. Like I was writing this project for Theater on the Road. I introduced it to Adrian. We kind of jammed it. Then we brought in the people. And then we just like, I think, which is again rare for us, like 1 week into that tour, started playing it in the show just to tell people what the new project was we were working on, and then kind of worked it out on stage almost. So it's harder to like. I remember better when we're making decisions in the studio, because it's like we're either gonna go like we're gonna do this, or we're gonna do like a key change. Like there's these big choices, but this one's just a kind of a little bit of a like, yeah, you know, your friends and you jamming.
A little more organic. Yeah, that did occur to me about the ending, about the sort of extended ending and the alternate melodies, which were really quite nice. But the thought occurred to me, like, I wonder about how many of these other songs happen like that, where you kind of run out of words and it's not quite a song yet. Does that happen a lot? Or
yeah, like there's a couple where I mean, it was fun to play with tighter lyrics. I am a writer by trade. That's what I do more than music. And so I'm usually long-winded and write way too many lyrics for a song. And it's a matter of cutting them and shutting me up. So it was kind of nice to only have for Donegal, we only had 2 little stanzas and a chorus we really liked, and made a 3-minute song out of it. But yeah, I think it's good. It's a little bit of a tighter album that way. Like I think if 14 songs and it clocks in at 38 minutes. So it's keeps it going. It keeps you moving through the album a little quicker.
Now the movie that's involved with this, how do people, I guess it's not done yet, or maybe it is, how would people be able to see this?
Yeah, it's done. It's been out on the Chan Center was where we were going to premiere it, and so they have moved it online for the pandemic. So you can just go to the Chan Center website, and if you just type in Chan Center Ridge, it'll come up, and you can stream it online. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I feel like we can brag about it because we had nothing to do with that stuff about just how good it looks. It just looks like $1 billion. It's the Chan Center really pivoted really hard. They have amazing filmographers and directors that we worked on with it. It just looks like $1 million. So
I've seen a little bit of it, and it looks great and it sounds great, and it just it really does.
Thanks. It was really, it's nice when things work out. The nice thing to come out of the pandemic for us was 300 tours got canceled, but we had this nice film out of it, so that's nice.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you guys how you interpreted the second verse of this song. Obviously you didn't write the words, but how, because it's not directly about war or anything like that.
Yeah, I found that actually that one really puzzling. Yeah, I've kind of puzzled. That's more than any other verse in the whole album. I've always been like,
what's that about?
It's almost like it seems to extend it to the war will continue going with you when you go back to your normal life. So I imagine this was a veteran who came back and was like a newspaper boy, and they came back, and then he was still he just still had that.
The kind of ripple effect.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a little oblique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or he's still living in his head. With the PTSD and the memories of the war, kind of feels like that.
Right? Yeah, that's how I kind of took it. I mean, just from hearing it, not really obsessing about it too much, but I just had that feeling that you don't shake the war, even if you're not done. You're still trying to get back to that place of innocence.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. But speaking of being done,
I hear the band is coming in, and I'm afraid that is all the time we have on Song Talk Radio today. Special thanks to the Fugitives, Adrian and Brendan. Where can our listeners find out more about your guys?
Well, I was going to say on our Fugitives Bandcamp page, you can get a package of the new album Trench Songs and a sort of an online ticket to watch the movie Ridge bundled together. So it's on Bandcamp, Fugitives. And we're also at fugitives.ca.
Okay, we'll definitely link to that in our show notes. And for those of you out there, we want to hear from you too. So please send us your comments on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at SongTalk Radio, or send us a good old-fashioned email, feedback@songtalk.ca. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel for live performance videos and full episodes now that we're all in these little virtual boxes. And subscribe today to the Song Talk Radio podcast on your favorite podcast provider. And don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter at songtalk.ca. And you can find links to all the products, books, and web services we mentioned on the show on our resources page. And wherever you are in the world, please join us online via Zoom at our next monthly Song Talk meetup. It's free to join on meetup.com and free to attend the meetup. Stop by songtalk.ca for the link. You can follow me at neilmodi.com. You can follow Phil.
philemery.ca.
And Michael?
On Instagram, Proudfoot420.
And Fugitives, what's your primary social media channel, guys?
Fugitives Music on Twitter and Instagram. And the Fugitives
All right.
on Facebook.
Sorry, we lost that.
What was that?
So the Fugitives on Facebook too. That's
Perfect.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to stop by the website, songtalk.ca, to browse past shows and find out how you can be a guest. Stay safe, everyone, and keep on writing.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
And we're out.
Insane. Wow. Brendan couldn't wait to be done. Boom, he's gone.
He had scotch. Made me want to go.
I know. I was looking at it going, oh, what am I doing drinking water like a sucker? Well, thank you very much,
Water
Adrian.
out of a bourbon bottle. So
I noticed that. I recognized the bottle. I thought, man, these guys are hardcore. They may not be touring, but they're still living like they're touring.
yeah, exactly.
Well, it's like being an athlete. You have to kind of keep up the, your muscle, so that when you do,
Stay in training.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Forget about guitar scales. Just make sure you drink every single night.
Exactly.
What else?
Exactly. So you don't forget when you're out on tour and I go, I can't play drunk anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
All right. Well,
I really loved the project and the sound of the songs. It was really great. So thanks for being on the show tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, it was cool to be asked such specific questions about writing and the process and stuff. It was really, really great.
That's what we aim for.
Oh, yeah. We're real nosy.
Get up there.
Song.
I was listening to your stuff on Bandcamp. The whole
Yeah.
album sounds really solid. Like it's really, really good stuff.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're really proud of it. It turned out really great. It really sounds like us, as I was saying, and it just. I also like as the shape of it. We have little in-betweener songs and kind of as like a record. And I know not that many people care about records anymore, but as like a start to finish piece, we really like the cohesiveness of it. So, yeah.
Very nice.
Anyways,
Great
thank you
stuff.
so much, guys. That was really awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
so
so
much.
much.
Good night.
All right.
Take care.
Yeah.
Take care.
Yeah.
All right.
Pretty good.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really good.
Really interesting project.
Yeah.
Yeah,
fascinating stuff.
it's a good thing to, that's a good thing to have to link to the show, right?
Yeah.
To the because there's a lot more you can dive into with this project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll check out the movie too. That's
I got an
amazing.
email from Frank Horvat today, and you remember his pandemic project, the Songs for
Yeah.
He got in touch with a filmmaker, and they're making a documentary about it.
Awesome.
And he's
Excellent.
he's asking everyone who participated, which I participated. I did a little video of his simple piano piece. If you wanted to do he has a little questionnaire about your life during the pandemic and that sort of stuff. And he said if you want to participate in his documentary, then
Awesome.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's great. It's that it's still got a life. I thought it was a great project, and then it was playing in some form at Roy Thompson Hall.
Yeah, he recorded every piece at Roy Thompson Hall with some amazing musicians.
Amazing.
Jeez.
He's always gotten stuff happening,
Yeah. But it's really interesting to hear about these really high concept things, and now, they're not really high concept necessarily, but at least they're concept.
Their concept.
They're concepts.
Yeah. I mean, it's looking at songwriting and music making in a different way, not the same configurations. Oh, I want to make a pop single and release it, or I'm going to make an album and release it, but I'm going to offer it to the world and let them create something. Yeah.
And that's actually, if you want to be noticed, I think now you kind of have to do that. I think you do have to actually make your project a little bit interesting, because everyone can write a pop song and release it.
Yeah, exactly. So your originality is more important now than ever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Gentlemen, I'm starving,
Oh,
so I'm going to have to go.
okay.
You've both eaten?
No, I'm about to.
No, okay. Yeah, I'm just going to go make myself some food.
I always make a point of that.
But-
Also, get super headachy by the end of the show.
Gets all
Oh,
cranky.
I don't have time before work goes right up to this. So,
Right.
but anyway, and what's next week's show? Is next week the listener thing or?
Listener, John.
Oh my God, it's upon us already. The first of our listener shows.
Yes.
That's right.
So we'll keep going until you stop writing us songs, sending us songs. Perfect.
Sending them in.
That's. I mean, we're looking for listener engagement. What could be better than something like that?
Yeah, it's been fun.
All right, guys.
All right.
All right.
We'll talk
Good
about
night. We'll talk in a couple of days.
Yep. All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.